Hi, I'm Dave.
And I'm Matt.
And welcome to Sofa Reviews. Today we're watching Jack Reacher.
Released in 2012, the movie originally gained controversy when it was announced that Tom Cruise would be playing the 6'5", 220-pound, blonde-haired, blue-eyed hero.
The film starts with a sniper calmly gunning down 5 innocent civilians before driving off in his van.
The police arrive soon after, taking lots of evidence that they can arrest a suspect.
In the station, Detective Emerson tells Barr to write down his confession, but is instead told to get Jack Reacher by the inexplicably mute Barr.
This allows Emerson and DA Jack Rodin to discuss Reacher and give the audience his backstory.
After learning that he's the US military equivalent of a combination of Sherlock Holmes, Batman and Jesus, we finally get to meet him.
They take Reacher to see Barr, who, after being beaten up in a prison van, is now in a coma.
For some reason, they won't let the random guy who walked in off the street look at the case evidence, and so he storms off.
They manage to stop him and we're introduced to Helen, the DA's daughter and Barr's defence attorney.
She seems quite keen to get his help, but Reacher is certain that Barr is guilty, and gives her Barr's backstory in Iraq to support this.
While in Iraq, Barr was a sniper, but he never got to shoot anyone, so at one point he decided to kill 4 civilians just before he was sent home.
Of course, this film doesn't want to make the US military look bad, so it turns out the 4 people he killed were foreign contractors rather than locals, and were also terrible people.
What Barr didn't know that day was the 4 contractors he picked off just spent the weekend in what they call a rape rally. There's 28 women.
Even knowing this, Helen still wants Reacher to help as she has integrity and thinks Barr deserves a fair trial.
He walks off, getting onto the bus only to change his mind for no apparent reason and decide to stay and help with the case.
The next day we see Reacher examining the crime scene as he's being watched by Linsky, a small-time criminal.
Later on, we see him at the evidence locker in the police station, which is ultimately just another excuse to show off how brilliant he is.
Yeah, well, anytime you want to come back, take a look at this stuff.
No thanks. Don't need to.
You never took any notes.
Oh, I don't need to.
That evening he's thinking about the case in a bar as he's approached by a girl named Sandy, who makes a clumsy pass at him.
Of course, like most women, she doesn't have a sense of humour and soon gets annoyed.
I am not a hooker.
Well, a hooker get the joke.
This leads to Reacher having to leave the pub in order to fight 5 thugs.
After a surprisingly polite chat, Reacher easily dispatches 3 of the thugs before the police show up.
He meets Helen at the station and he explains that the fight was clearly a setup, as someone wants him out of the way.
They go to a motel where Helen tells Reacher everything she knows about the murder victims, and thankfully this tragic discussion about innocent murder victims isn't followed by sex.
Elsewhere we see Linsky talking to Charlie, the actual sniper, about Reacher.
Charlie informs Linsky that he's actually failed this performance review, and so we get to meet the main villain of the film, the Zek.
He tells Linsky that he will be killed if he doesn't demonstrate his will to survive by biting off his own fingers.
Guys! I can't!
What is a bullet? I don't understand.
Well, Mr. Zek, it's actually quite easy to understand. Being shot in the head is a lot easier than biting your own fingers off.
The next day they see that Barr was filling up his tank every Saturday and Reacher works out that he must have been visiting a distant gun range and asks Helen to check it out for him.
She then drops him off at an auto parts store as Sandy, the delightful skank from earlier, mentioned that she worked there.
He barges into the back of the shop and waits for Sandy to tell him everything.
She gives him the address and car of Jeb, the leader of the gang in the bar fight, and he wants her to get out of town.
He looks around the house before being rudely interrupted by a baseball bat to the back of the head.
Luckily, Reacher is being attacked by the Chuckle Brothers, who do most of the work for him.
I got this!
Okay.
After dealing with those 2, he interrogates the 3rd thug, discovering that Jeb had a meeting and hasn't been seen since, and he isn't the type to skip town.
That evening, Reacher meets up with Helen and explains that he thinks Barr has been framed, managing to outline his theory despite her desperate attempts to distract him with her breasts.
Despite Reacher supporting his theory with reasonable explanations that the crime scene was too perfect, Helen just assumes he's insane.
He tells her to look out of the window, leading to one of the best bits in the film, which sadly doesn't go anywhere.
Imagine you've spent your whole life in other parts of the world, being told every day you're defending freedom. And finally you decide you've had enough. Time to see what you've given up your whole life for. Maybe get some of that freedom for yourself. Look at the people. Now tell me which ones are free. Free from debt, anxiety, stress, fear, failure.
They check the license plates of a car that's been following Reacher, discovering it's registered to a company that's connected to one of the victims.
Helen then explains that despite being a lawyer and having a job that involves casting reasonable doubt on a case, she's apparently not allowed to do any form of investigation. Presumably, she's just there to distract the jury with her breasts.
Meanwhile, Charlie and another goon kill Sandy and leave her body at Jack Reacher's motel to frame him.
Because they're looking for someone who could kill Sandy with a single punch, the motel owner immediately suspects the 6'5" monster of Jack Reacher.
Emerson spots Reacher and draws his gun rather than trying to talk to him, which leads to a car chase.
As well as trying to evade the police, Reacher is also chasing Charlie, who for some reason was still following Reacher despite knowing that his car had already been checked.
The car chase ends with Charlie getting away and Reacher abandoning his car so that he can hide with some civilians.
Presumably, everyone in this city hates the police and will aid wanted criminals at any opportunity.
We then see Emerson and the DA telling Helen about Sandy and that they're trying to find out where Jack Reacher is.
Reacher then phones Helen, explaining that he's not a criminal and is being framed, and that he stole her car.
He goes to the shooting range used by Bar before befriending the owner, Martin Cash.
They review the security footage, spotting Charlie came with Bar to the gun range.
We then see Helen telling her dad about the conspiracy, but when he suggests that she go into protective custody, she storms off.
This then makes it incredibly easy for Emerson to kidnap her in the lift.
Reacher isn't intimidated by this, however, and after outwitting Charlie on the phone, he arranges to meet him in a quarry.
He calls Martin for help, who, while still being willing to come all that way to help Reacher at night, isn't willing to kill anyone or even give him a gun.
They set their plan into motion, Reacher driving Helen's car into the quarry while Cash covers him.
Things are looking bad for our hero until he finds a really nice rock.
Now armed, he knocks down the door, only to discover that his princess is in another castle.
The next scene is quite reminiscent of Peekaboo, but with murder.
After all the goons are killed, Reacher challenges Charlie to mortal combat.
After he kills Charlie, we get to see how brave Emerson is, as he uses Helen as a human shield.
Reacher immediately manages to take him out with a single shot and causing no damage to Helen.
This allows him to finally confront the Zek, while Helen phones the police.
However, after realising that he's killed all of the witnesses, Reacher realises that the Zek won't be going to prison, so he decides to take matters into his own hands.
What did you do?
Well, he had a gun, and you heard a gunshot, so I'm going to go with dusting.
Now that Helen's safe, Reacher explains that it's time for him to leave, leaving her to clear his name and deal with the aftermath.
The next day, Bar conveniently recovers from his coma with no ill effects, helping to confirm Reacher's theory of how Bar actually would have committed the crime had he been guilty.
The film ends with Bar going on about how awesome Reacher is as we see him leave on a bus. And in conclusion, I really like this film, and doubly so on a second watching. Firstly, while this is more technically praised for the book than the film, it's actually a very intelligent plot, with the murder of 5 people used as a cover-up to assassinate one target. It's also nice to see villains that are intelligent, dedicated and competent as well.
True, but that sadly comes totally unravelled when they come up against our hero, who is brilliant and competent to the point of being irritating. He very easily unearths a conspiracy and manages to outwit everyone he deals with, at no point seeming worried or even angry. The whole film, when you see him, there's very much a sense of, oh, this again, as if he's just remembered he needs to brush his teeth again, rather than unravel a murderous conspiracy.
Another thing I really enjoyed was the build-up and atmosphere. The opening sniper scene where there's no dialogue at all, and it's just slow, silent build-up, as we're getting us to contemplate on the actual actions that happen. I also really enjoyed the action scenes, specifically the fight scenes themselves, where there's no music, and all of them are very well shot so that you can see every bit of brutal action.
Although as much as I enjoyed that aspect of the opening scene, I thought it was quite a shame that we actually saw the sniper's face. It ruins any kind of immersion in the story or interest in the conspiracy when the audience know from the off that Barr is actually innocent.
One thing that I felt combined both of the aspects that I really enjoyed was the car chase scene. It was actually very tense and clever, with a lot of atmosphere and being slow and careful rather than ridiculously fast and over the top like the Transporter movies.
Although sadly that meant it did feel quite drawn out and ultimately boring, and for some reason they decided to go with some weird camera angles. As far as I know, this was because they wanted to show that it was actually Tom Cruise driving the car, but this doesn't actually add anything to the film and only seems to be there to stroke Tom Cruise's ego.
At the end of the day, it's a well-shot, intelligent movie with fantastic action scene and realistic fisticuffs.
Ultimately, I think this could be a good film if it actually had any real sense of suspense. Instead, it just seems drawn out, self-indulgent and boring, and is just yet another mundane task for Jack Reacher.
That is a look I've seen many, many times. When the soldier comes, when you watch how he dies, you will want to forget me then.
He does knock one man unconscious with another man's head at one stage.
Yeah. That's to frame him for murder.
Yeah.
The perfect crime. He walks off, getting onto the bus.
And the film ends.
The end.